Good morning, everyone. Very warm welcome to this edition of Sunday Special with Psychiatry Teachers 60 Minutes. It's a joint initiative of Indian Psychiatry Society, Teachers Forum Subcommittee, Undergraduate Education Subcommittee, Postgraduate Education Subcommittee. Every Sunday or every available Sunday, we bring something which is important for the psychiatry teachers. This Sunday special started around 2 years back. In this program, we bring resources across India which is beneficial for the psychiatry education. This particular edition is about Must Enrich Grant. Must Enrich Grant is the Minds United for Health Sciences and Humanity Trust and Infosys Foundation and Indian Teachers of Psychiatry collaborative funded projects where the research grant is given to the people who apply for the grant and a panel of experts select and they work on the chosen field which benefits the psychiatry education in India. This particular program on today, we have with us Dr. Rajiv Saini, who is the medical superintendent at the Command Hospital in Chandigarh. Sir is well known in the field of the psychiatry education in terms of the armed forces, where he has extensive experience. When he brought about this particular project about how do we train psychiatry teachers in guiding students when in terms of selection of theses, how do they convey the message, how do they handhold the students to do the research. So his dilemmas and his things led to this work under Professor Mohan. Without much delay, I would like to invite Dr. Rajiv Saini to do his presentation, and I would request his guide, Professor Mohan, who does not need introduction on any aspect, particularly in relation to the field of psychiatry education in India and extensive work in the community mental health. So over to Dr. Rajiv Saini. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll just share my screen.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. At the outset, sir, I want to thank Minds United Trust, and I really want to thank Dr. Mohan for being my guide. In fact, it's been a proud honor and a privilege to work under him. So when last year this topic was given to me, last year,
on
in
your
fact.
video also.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So, last year when this I came to know about this research grant, not the money per se, but the initiative. In fact, it was a very excellent and it took some pace initially, but sadly in between it lost pace. But nevertheless, I have always been part of it and I will continue to remain part of it. So the topic which was given to me for research was choosing the right dissertation topic. So topic itself is a topic that you can easily make out. And this topic is generally the initiative point into any postgraduate medical teaching. So all of us have gone through the dilemmas and the conjectures and the difficulties. And end of the day, we realize how important it is to be a good researcher. So I must acknowledge initially my students, who now I regard them as my teachers. Major Rajit currently is in Tezpur. Sergeant Commander Amit Chal is in Chandigarh with me. Major Ankit Damji, who is in Dehradun. Dr. Krishnendu Datta now is in Delhi. Scholar Rohit is in South India, that is Kochi. Dr. Carol is waiting for her posting. Currently, she has finished her post-graduation in Calcutta. Major Manpreet has moved to Lucknow. Major Sunil is in Bareilly, and Dr. Qureshi is in right now is in Guwahati. So you can easily make out the students that we come across and whom we have guided. They have spread all over the country and they have become specialists, and now they are my teachers. Of course, I convey my Regards to Dr. Mohan Isaac, who was with whom I was attached. So this is the outline of the study that we conducted, and this is the way I'm going to present. Initially, the introduction part, and second is the aim of the study, then methods that we employ, and traditional Indian teaching methods. Also, we will discuss for some time because being Indian and India has been the hotbed of learning across the world from ancient times. So we must never ever forget the values that we have imbibed or we have got as inheritance from our ancestors. So it is a must that I discuss something about that as well. So what are the qualities of a good researcher, research topic, and a researcher? What are the pitfalls and the dilemmas and faced by the resident? And with the some amount of research that we did, we were able to make a questionnaire. And I am happy to share with you that this questionnaire is now being used in at least two institutions with which I was attached, that is FMC Pune and Command Hospital Calcutta. In fact, Kal Chaudhary was very kind that he extrapolated this questionnaire and now he's doing some research on this questionnaire in DY Patil for making it pan specialty. So that is, it can be incorporated to other specialties also. And finally, the conclusion part. Submitting the research proposal and completing thesis writing is often considered as a burden by the postgraduate. तो जैसे ही हम पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन ज्वाइन करते हैं तो वैसे ही हमको ध्यान मिलते हैं लोग कि यहाँ पे आपको थीसिस लिखनी पड़ेगी. So initially they come with very easy solutions to this. You do something which has already been done. Somebody has written, you just copy paste it. So there are only two ways of doing anything: the right way and the wrong way. So there at least 10 people will come and tell you the wrong way. But the right way, what is the right way? That is the topic of today's discussion. It is also considered a formality by some faculty also. Unfortunately, many faculty also tell you you have to do it, might as well do it, just finish it off so that you can start studying. It is often used as a stick with which a resident can be cornered anytime. Lack of experience in research methods and manuscript writing. When we get students after the NEET exam, so generally they have worked up few questions and answers for the NEET exam, and which they were able to vomit out during the answer, and subsequently they got selected. But however, from rote learning to creative learning or creative writing, that is something, the transition is what really troubles them. So they lack experience in research methods and manuscript writing. It is a major limiting factor. However, if conducted properly with meaningful outcome, it can prove to be an important stepping stone for future researchers. That should always be remembered. Therefore, it is important to prime the student by the teachers before serious work. So it is our duty as teachers to prime the student that do not be in a hurry to select the topic. You please understand the subject, try to understand the nuances of the subject before you zero into any topic. Straight away, don't jump into selecting a topic and bringing it or taking it from somebody else. So framing the research question is often the most interesting as well as challenging task of the whole process. The process should be enjoyed. The journey should be enjoyed. Only then the outcome will be good. It should not become painful or required. So why research at the postgraduate level? You will all agree, as a doctor, we always come across many challenges in which there are many options available to us. So how do we decide the right option in the benefit of the patient? So we should be able to critically analyze any clinical situation, read about it more, and come up with some probable differentials so that we can zero into the final diagnosis. That is the crux of the medical education also. So we encourage the postgraduate to start thinking like that. That is why it is an essential energy requirement. Modern medicine practice is purely based on scientific principles and evidence based. So this research methodology or doing a research, it tells you this, that you have to follow certain scientific principles and only then you can learn to practice medicine. A postgraduate in medical science is encouraged to indulge in focused, systematic inquiry to generate new knowledge. She should be able to find the right answer after scientific analysis. Therefore, choosing the right topic and framing the scientific question with sound methodological design under mentorship of a trained guide forms basis of a meaningful research. This, in fact, is the most important thing, framing the scientific question. So to enable the fresh postgraduate to formulate the sound topic, a mnemonic can be remembered that it should be feasible within the available means. You cannot think of something which is not available and to start trying to do that. It should be interesting for the researcher. It should be a novel, only which has been done many times. There's no point repeating the exercise. It should be ethically correct so that the patient is not subjected to non-scientific experiments in a non-scientific manner. It should be ethically correct and it should be relevant to the society where a resident or the doctor is working. It should be relevant. For example, if we are doing a research on tuberculosis or malaria or leprosy or major mental illness like schizophrenia, it is very, very relevant in our country. So that is the whole point. So how we went about conducting this search? So first we chose few articles from the PubMed with keywords on Google Scholar like thesis topic, postgraduate pitfalls and guide. So we also perused guidelines by National Medical Commission regarding research work by postgraduates. It is clearly laid out the basic principles which we must follow. So traditional methods of teaching and learning in the Indian context were also researched. So dilemmas and the pitfalls of research at postgraduate level, they were also researched. Publications of cases in index journals, that we will try to find out how many actually got published. This grading thesis, how many actually got published. About 20 articles were extracted and 30 were found to be suitable and useful. So based on that, we developed a 10 item simple questionnaire. It was subjected to face and content validity as a checklist for students before they submit a proposal. So this is the outcome of our study. So inputs were obtained from guide for further refining the research topic. My guide was Dr. Mohan, as I mentioned earlier. For further refining before submitting the manuscript. I'm happy to share the manuscript was accepted and published, and it is now available on PubMed. So coming to Indian context, if we remember the Guru Chela system has been in vogue since centuries, and it has really helped to develop scholars in our country. So based on principle of mentor and mentee, I would like to mention here also the the concept of Upanishads, which basically means sitting near a teacher and asking questions and then learning. So sitting near a teacher by asking questions, that is, the student is allowed to ask questions and questions are answered by the teacher. That is basically Upanishads is basically describes. If we remember that Lord Dhanvantari, when he came up with the elixir of life, that is Amrit, so he also did Samudra Manthan. So that means a lot of deliberations did take place before he was able to bring in Amrit for the gods. That is how they were made immortals. So the whole idea is that the student should be encouraged to ask questions. So this rote learning from textbook is discouraged, and learning by asking questions and questions being answered by the teacher is promoted in the Indian context since centuries. In brief, from passive learner till the time of post-graduation from textbook, a student transforms into an active researcher so that he can analyze any clinical situation, he can think, he can go back, ask his teacher or ask his textbooks, and then he can come with a rational clinical decision before he actually starts teaching. That is the whole idea of postgraduate teaching. So what are the essentials of a good research? From this article, we were able to make some sort of a mnemonic. It says research hard. So the essentials of a good researcher are: he should be research oriented, he should be ethical, scientific, he should be effective, active. That means he should actively take part in the research activities. he should be able to generate resources for the whatever study that he's doing. Should be creative and innovative. He should be honest in diverging the findings. It is so important to be honest, truthful in diverging the findings. Just to get your point across, you should not fudge the data. And it should be economical in utilization of available resources, and it should be religiously devoted to the chosen field of research. That's a very essential ingredient of a good researcher. So, what are the dilemmas faced by the student in our context, at least? Majority of the students, if you see today, they come with background of MBBS, in which they got entry by mugging a lot of subjects like physics, chemistry, biology, from standard textbook, going to the tuition classes, and then doing the MBS. From second or third year onward, we start working a group of MCQs for his PG exams. And the moment the idea of doing something on his own, or to be creative or applying his mind, then he develops goosebumps. So they have very limited exposure to research methodology and medical practice. So clinical duties and ward work consume most of his time. Nobody will give him credit for doing his research work properly. In fact, they will give him credit only for doing his clinical work properly. So therefore, that takes priority. But nevertheless, he has to devote extra time, which he often finds very difficult to devote, at least in the second year, in which he should be doing or rather completing his post-graduation or this thesis work. So he has multiple sources of pressure from the guide, peers, seniors, sometimes pharma as well, or from his own private needs as well. There are certain ethical concerns which do come, especially relating to the data collection and to be able to tabulate the data and not fudge the data. And so in our country, the students often feel lack of support from infrastructure because our hospitals are like that, and statistician, which is a rare commodity. Most of the time, students are in the habit of dumping the questions on the statistician that please bring some data and try to make some result out of it. Rather than accumulating the data themselves, analyzing it themselves, in the end, they can do some and take some help from the statistician for the test that they have to apply. But beyond that, they should do the work themselves. So during this process, they are driven towards the आसान रास्ता or the झूठ वाला रास्ता. So many people will tell you, क्या कर रहा है? What are you doing? Why are you wasting time here? Just do what others have already done. Just copy and paste. Pick up a well-researched topic. Give up the burning desire to add to the knowledge base. They tell you you're not going to add something new. Already a lot of available knowledge or information is there. It is not going to make any difference. So why are you devoting so much time? Or do research work on behalf of the faculty. Sometimes the faculty dump their own research projects on the students. So it leads to loss of originality and creative thinking. Therefore, it is so important to encourage to choose and frame a topic that conveys the gist of the whole research in consonance with the area of interest. For example, my guide gave me a topic which was never done or which was never even thought of earlier. Then augmentation of tricyclic antidepressants with lithium from the outset in the treatment of unipolar major depression. So I must give credit to my guide, Dr. M.S. B.K. Raju. So this area was never researched. So he threw the challenge on me, will you be able to do it? I said, let me first research the topic. I'll come back to you after 6 weeks. Take 8 weeks. You come back to me after that. If you find it interesting, then we will frame a topic. So he gave me 2 months to research the topic. So I must thank him once again, Dr. Raju, for the which I did. Subsequently, it got published also in a PubMed. So therefore, it is but natural to face challenges during the research process. Certain challenges are infrastructure, case numbers, addition, deletion of variables, unforeseen situations like COVID-19. Many students were not able to complete their research, so there should be some scope for change. So you should not really adhere to the topic that you chose earlier. So there should be some scope of revision during the process of That is why we say, no, you join in August, but you submit a proposal next year, probably in March or April. Subsequent to that, if you want to change or you want to make a revision of the topic, that is also allowed with the consent of the guide. So there may be some new information while you are doing a research. Some original article already starts figuring in the indexed journal. So therefore, what is so new that you are doing? A similar study published during research, there could be a change in guide also. Like in armed forces also we get posted out, so our student is left in the lurch. So that is one of the difficulties that we face. So one must remain flexible in minor revision of the research topic to accommodate the variation and spin-offs. So it is good to find a common ground. So what is the common ground? Go through some scientific papers you enjoy reading. That is why we have journal club during postgraduate. It is so important to expose the student to the variety of literature available on variety of topics. He should be exposed to before he starts finalizing his topic. Research current events to see what's happening in your specialty. Look for gaps in current research related to your field. So there should be some gap which you can fill up with your research. Look for those gaps. Ask your professors which topic they think is right for you, because everybody is different. Everybody's temperament is also different. Capabilities are also different. So ask teachers what may be right for me. Ask your guide areas in which he is. So important that the guide should also be having sufficient experience in the chosen field. So think about what type of work you plan to do in future. Eliminate topics that don't seem to offer avenues for new research. Identify the questions you think you can be best researched. Write the questions in at least 5 to 6 ways and try to accommodate maximum information in as little words as possible. So one should remain open-minded till about 3 to 4 months of selecting the topic. So they should try to find in what aspect if I can frame the question so that it fulfills the common ground that we discussed earlier. Find a research topic with the help of the guide. So important. Take 3 or 4 months to actually finalize the topic. That is the time required in which you should study all the topics relevant to your topic, all the facets of the topic, and then come to the topic. So after having done it, it's so important to ask some 10 questions to oneself before you actually put up the topic for approval by the ethical committee. These questions the resident must be able to answer themselves. So how do you rate importance of this thesis work during presentation? On a scale of 0 to 10, you can say not relevant or very important. Do you think that your research topic probes an important scientific problem that affects society as a whole? How much is your interest in the chosen topic of your research work? Do you agree that your research work is backed by sufficient literature search? Do you agree that your research work will be able to generate meaningful outcomes? How confident are you that your research will be available within available resources? How confident are you that you will be able to accommodate spin-off during time frame of your research? Have you catered sufficiently for ethical concerns of your research topic? Have you studied the methodological design of your research question? And how confident are you that your research will translate into publication? So these are very important questions felt from the heart of a resident, which he should be able to answer truthfully to himself. Even he is able to answer to yes to at least 4 or 5 questions out of these 10 questions, I think we can go ahead. But in case he finds no in 9 out of 10 questions, then straight away he should back off and say probably I'll do something else rather than this. So we did a small survey on about 20 postgraduate students based on this questionnaire. So on question number 1, how do you rate importance of thesis in postgraduation? About 40% said that it is quite important, and 20% said it is very important. Whereas 40% were neutral or they said probably it is not required also. Do you think that your research question probes an important scientific problems affecting the society as a whole? About 60% said probably yes and strongly yes. 40% were not very convinced. How much do you rate degree of your interest in the chosen topic of research? So about 100% said that now they have developed somewhat or keen interest in the topic of your research. Do you agree that your research question is backed by sufficient literature search? About 80% of said yes, it is backed by sufficient literature research. Probably they meant that there are enough articles on this topic already available on the web. Do you think that your research question will be able to generate a meaningful outcome? Almost everybody said yes to this. How confident are you that you will be able to complete your research within the available resources? Almost everybody said yes to it. How confident are you that your research question will be able to accommodate unexpected spin-offs during the stability? Almost 60% said quite sure, 40% were not non-committed. Have you catered sufficiently about ethical concerns before finalizing your research grant? Everybody said yes, because every proposal is vetted by the ethical committee before it is put up to the university for final approval. Have you sufficiently studied the methodological design before research questions? 60% said yes, 40% did not have any clue about it. How confident are you that your research will be translated into publication? See, that is the eventual objective of any research activity, that it should reach a meaningful conclusion and it should get published in a scientific journal or index journal. So that is the whole idea of doing research. Only then you can contribute, or you can claim that you have contributed something to the existing knowledge base. So to conclude, an interesting topic of research at postgraduate level is important building block for future pedigree of researchers and innovation, at least in our country. And I thank ITOPS for initiating this. At least they have started thinking that we need good research base. And I'm happy to note that they are willing to provide support also during the process of this research activity. I don't know to what extent, but I understand that like strong methodological designs and statistical analysis will be provided to the students who undertake this research. The topic should be simple and yet convey gist of the research work being undertaken. The selection of topic must be given due importance and student must invest sufficient effort in its formulation. So it can go a long way in allaying apprehensions associated with submission of proposals and completion of thesis work. So I finish here, sir, and I thank the organizers of this platform for giving me an opportunity, and I thank Dr. Mohan Isaac once again for his guidance and support. Though it is a very simple topic, it is very easily written also in the published article. But I think it is a very important article for anybody who joins PG, at least in medicine, psychiatry, like these are the fields, or pediatrics for that matter. That's all. Thank you very much.
Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Rajiv Saini, for an excellent presentation of your work. As you have indicated in your presentation, the work is already published. That is excellent. Within a very short time after you completed the work, your work was written up and published. Now, I would like to, in the time available to me, make several comments about the topic, about this mass research grant, number of things. And also lots of questions and comments have come in the chat box. First thing I would like to say is that for the ITOP and this group of people who have been involved in the Indian Teachers of Psychiatry, this work by Dr. Saini is in a way very special. Of course, because of the topic, but not so much about that. What I wanted to say was, this is the first time amongst all these group, and I have also been attending this Sunday special in the last several days, the last several weeks, when all must research grant people who have completed their work has been making their presentation. What I wanted to say was, this is the first time, and perhaps the only person from the arm from the Indian services. Dr. Saini is a serving officer who is in the Armed Forces Medical Services. And his interest in teaching, research, doing this work has been admirable. Uh, uh, he is a very modest person. At this point in time, he is a commanding officer of uh, uh, the Chandigarh Hospital. He is a brigadier. When he started this work, if I'm right, he was only a colonel. He has been elevated. And in the message that I got last night, he says that although he is very busy with his administration, he finds time to teach students, uh, you know, and he is continuing to be interested in teaching. This is very creditable. This is very good. Now, I want to also point out the second slide where, he shows the acknowledgement. Who are the people who helped him to do this work? Many of them may have been his postgraduates in Calcutta at that time when he was doing the research. That's not the point I wanted to mention. All of them are also majors or colonels, or they hold ranks in the Indian services. And he also pointed out that at that time they were there, but now somebody is in Kochi, somebody is in Srinagar, somebody is, they're all in different parts of the country. I think for the ITOP, this is indeed very creditable because, because we had one doctor from the services who got into this scholarship, got interested, etc. In fact, I still remember when the early days when this application came, Kishor had sent me all the applications, and I was wondering, oh, what is this army officer who is a commandant in Calcutta going to do with this program? We were trying to aim at teachers or postgraduates and undergraduates in medical schools, which are spread out all over the country in not so resource places, etc. But in the very first program, when we advertised and received application, what struck us most was that many of the applicants were from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, from PGI, from NIMANS, etc., command hospitals, people who had already worked as teachers before coming to Command Hospital in Calcutta. Dr. Saini was Associate Professor of Psychiatry at the Armed Forces Medical College. So that is when we realize that this is a important area where we need to constantly discuss and debate enhancing teaching, researching qualities amongst our teachers. The point I'm making is we thought, okay, people will apply from small places, remote medical colleges which were newly started in district headquarters, etc. But all our applicants, and then of course, that is how the Must Enrich grant program came up. So the first point I want to make is that I have been terribly impressed with Dr. Saini's continued diligence and commitment, in spite of working in the army, working, with a different kind of clientele, which most of us are not very familiar with. I know about the kind of stresses and strains that doctors working in the armed forces, medical services have, because I have a very close friend. I'm referring to Colonel Goyle. While he was working in the services, I didn't know him. After his retirement, he was a national consultant in the Nirman Bhavan when I was the head of the Department of Psychiatry at NIMANS. And for the National Mental Health Program and a number of other things, we worked very closely. He continues to be my very good friend with some kind of exchange mail. He is now 80 years plus, but his knowledge, scholarship, his continuing to be in touch with very often new articles about something about clozapine, etc. It's only when Dr. Goyle sends me the link that I come to know about it. Although I am continuing to work as a professor in a university, etc. So Dr. Saini is that kind of a doctor. That's my first point. Now, the second point is some of the things that he mentioned in the introductory slide. Of course, I'm not going to talk about the findings, etc. That is very quite simple, straightforward. But I want to highlight two or three things that he mentioned in his very first or second slide. Very often, when a postgraduate has to do a research and submit a thesis, how is it perceived? How is it approached? He has highlighted in a very simple and nice way, but I think that is very important. For most people, it is just a formality. Okay, the university requires it, or the National Medical Council requires it. Formally, it was the Indian Medical Council. So when anything is considered as just a formality, not adequate effort goes into it, you don't apply your mind. His introductory slide also says that two more things he says. One is it's a formality, so our approach is very casual. Then he says the student thinks it is a burden. That is true. I think it is still, that is how it has been 40, 50 years ago when I was a student doing MD, and probably even now. And I see currently a lot of discussion and debates in many of these EIPS, etc., in the light of the new National Medical Council guidelines about involvement with pharma, writing generic names, etc. A lot of people have also been talking about research by medical college faculty, by postgraduates, etc. So the another point which Dr. Saini makes is that many young people think that, oh, this is a burden. I have to somehow get over this, etc. And the third point, I think that is what I wanted to really highlight, and this is also a point which Dr. Saini has made in his introductory slide. It is often used as a stick. This is very interesting. Uh, I know that this used to occur many years ago. I've since Dr. Saini has put this in his introductory slide, probably it still occurs. What does he mean by this? The thesis is used as a stick by the guide, by the department, by the head of the department to beat the student who is not a very diligent or maybe who is mischievous, etc. So these are all the ways in which thesis is approached. And in the light of all this, I think his work is, although as he very rightly said, it's very simple. What has he done? Simple questionnaire, and he has inquired into a number of things, etc. But I think it is very important. And it is very important to change these attitudes and bring seriousness. I learned from his presentation that in some medical colleges, they are using the questionnaire that he has developed. And although he very casually mentioned about the paper, I would advise that all psychiatry, postgraduate psychiatry teachers all over the country should read this particular paper, which is come out of Dr. Saini's presentation. I do not know whether it is already available on the ITOP website. I would request Kishor to write to all the postgraduate teachers that, you know, as long, while thesis is considered as a formality, as a burden, as a stick to beat the students, etc., please do go through this paper by Dr. Saini, which is, I think, in the Industrial Journal of Psychiatry. Now, in the paper, of course, there are some very interesting things, much more than what he has presented. The time was very limited. One of the things he says is, do not bite more than you can chew. I mean, some of us are very grandiose when we think of, that is the other side of the spectrum. And you take up a lot of things and you are not able to complete. I'm not going to go into all that has been said in the paper. Now, last point I would like to make is that when you have done your thesis well, I mean, post-graduation is a very important period in anybody's life, all medical specialist life. You think of your postgraduate days very nostalgically, your classmates, your work, although it's a lot of extra work, it's a period that you don't forget at all. And thesis is also one such thing where if you had a good experience, you remember. I am one of those who remembers my MD thesis. I'm sure Dr. Saini is one like that because he did mention about Dr. MSVK Raju as a guide, what he did, how he took it, etc. So he still very nostalgically remembers his own MD thesis. I think this is what we should make the thesis experience for all our postgraduate students so that they remember that all their life. It can be for various things, not because it resulted in some great outcome and you made a big finding. But it should be, as has been pointed out also in the chat box by many people, it should be sort of enlightening them to give them this, you know, interest, curiosity for searching, etc. I also very fondly remember my own thesis, also because, my thesis was, in fact, I very proudly say that I have now finished some 40 plus years in my career. I have never been able to publish a paper in the Lancet. It was my MD thesis and the very first paper that I wrote, which was published in the Lancet. And I wrote, when my professor, Dr. R.L. Kapoor, asked me, okay, this is good, you don't write it up, you write it up and send it to Lancet. I thought he was crazy. Sir, I asked him, sir, are you in one of those very grandiose, hypomanic mood? Lancet will not even look into it. Then he told me, no, no, no. He advised me. He helped me write a simple paper. It's a short paper. We send it. Now, what happened was we immediately got a letter from the editor saying that this is fine. We are willing to accept it. We are not even sending it to a referee. As long as you will let us make few grammatical corrections, your paper is accepted. This was something which I didn't believe. I mean, it is published in 1978. I did my research thesis in 76, 77. I very fondly remember my own thesis, uh, not just because it was published in Lancet, but a number of other things. Now, these days, of course, if you want to read a paper, you can Google. Many of them are, online, freely available. Those days, particularly if it is available, published in the Lancet, you write to the author for, a reprint request. There used to be cards people write, and I got the reprint requests maybe about 300 or 400 from all over the world. This is one highlight of my own career in the last 50 years. When I look back, I think of my thesis and the publication. I would end here. I know I have exceeded my time, Kishore. So the point is that please read the paper which Dr. Saini has written about how to write a thesis, how to choose a topic for a thesis, which gives much more than the little presentation that Dr. Saini has made. Back to you, Kishore.
Now it is open for questions and discussion. I request if anybody has questions, either in person, you can ask the question or you put it in the chat box. And we have also circulated Dr. Rajiv Saini's work in the chat box. It is accessible for anybody who wants to look at it. I think in Indian scenario, I think it's one of the most extensively researched and presented article in this aspect. So if anybody has question, please, now it is your time.
Sir, I am Dr. Bhavesh Lakadawala from Ahmedabad.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Sir, I want to ask Dr. Mohan Isaac, sir. Sir, in the Gujarat, or it is a very, I feel it is a very pathetic way of doing the research. The research in many institutes, now it is done in a spiral binding. They do not, even institute do not give the importance of the thesis. They feel that all the theses are going to be accepted, and they are accepted. Up till now, there is no unacceptance of the thesis of any students, and many teachers are there who believe that why should we take burden of the student's thesis? It is his problem. So, but I believe in myself that I will work what I will do, and I am continuing to I continue to do this whatever I can, though I am not the doing any extraordinary work, but what I can do, I'm doing. But many teachers are there, many departments are there. They do not they ignore the thesis, and later on found during the examination time that in the thesis topic there is something mistake. and student has to rush to the university to change the topic.
In fact, Bhavesh, thank you very much for raising this important problem. You have, of course, said that this is a problem in Gujarat because you work in Gujarat and you are probably much better aware of what happens in Gujarat. But the reason why I mentioned those 3 or 4 points from Rajiv's first slide, introduction slide, how is thesis approached? It's a burden. It's a stick to beat the student. It is just a formality. Nobody bothers about it. So I think what you have highlighted is, some of these kind of attitudes, prevailing attitudes. I would imagine that this is not in just Gujarat. It is probably all over the country. And I do not know, but I guess that this is probably also something which is occurring in other specialities, not just in psychiatry, in other specialities where post graduation is required. Because going by the debate that I have been following about the National Medical Council guidelines about what kind of researches occur in medical college. I'm not talking about psychiatry now, about other branches of medicine. Although the medical council says that the 5 or 6 goals of the Indian medical graduate is etc. expert this that etc. But is also a lifelong learner. So on the one hand, we have revised we have in a way adapted the CanMed, the Canadian Medical Council's goals for a medical graduate. This is what we want the Indian medical graduate to be. So there's a lot of discussion in various forums about, triggered by, of course, National Medical Council's very, very stringent guidelines about prescribing generics, about involvement with pharma and all that. But they're also talking about research. So what I would like to say is that, your example, you have been very boldly saying, okay, Gujarat, there is a pathetic situation. Gujarat, of course, is for the rest of us in India, the model state for development and many other things. That aside, you have, of course, been very open in saying that, but I guess that this is a situation in most parts of the country, in other states. The only way we can, when you find something wrong occurring, you have to advocate for change. You have to become a role model. And I believe that you are doing that. Recruit more people into that. Get your postgraduates into a different way of looking at things so that when they become postgraduate teachers in other medical colleges, and now there are lots of new medical colleges, they follow you rather than the other kind of pattern. Other than that, I don't think there is any kind of revolution that we can bring about in this change. And that is the reason why I mentioned that Dr. Saini's paper on how to choose a research topic should be a mandatory reading paper for all postgraduate teachers in all postgraduate training centers in the country. These are my responses to you, Bhavesh. Thank you for raising the question. I think you hit at the nail. This is a problem in most medical colleges. Maybe
And sir,
Rajiv and Kishor also would like to respond to this.
and sir, one another thing that most of the teachers and the students, they are not they are not aware, or they are not accompanied with the statistics of the what are the findings. They do
Yeah.
all the things, but now how to do statistics of that of their variables, it
Yeah.
is very difficult. So many times it becomes a problem. So
Yeah.
I openly say that it is also a problem for me also.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
I am a professor in HOD.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Sure.
what I can do?
Yeah. In fact, Dr. Saini's paper talks about this issue as well. He talks about getting involvement from other departments in your own medical college. Most importantly, statistics, maybe getting them, becoming friends with them, maybe getting them involved as co-guides for your thesis. There are a number of, the problem that you're facing is problem that you're facing. In fact, in the introduction, another point which I did not highlight what he is also mentioned. There are several points in that. Is that a lot of places, part of the problem is because of the lack of experience in writing a research protocol for publication. See, the postgraduate teacher himself, who is now guiding a student for thesis, himself has had not a very good experience. Has faced all this problem. He has lack of experience. So how do you expect him to become a better guide? You have to first train yourself to become a better guide. And that is why Dr. Saini has talked about a number of these issues about taking up research. The two mnemonics that he mentioned for research and researcher is also worth remembering. I would request Saini also and Kishor also to respond to these questions.
May I, sir, first?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Firstly, sir, Dr. Bhavesh, thank you very much. You raised very pertinent points, and they seem to come from the heart, sir. I can feel it. And we all agree with your observations, sir. They are pan-India, sir. Not pan-India, but I would say in many countries. I would not name the countries, but nevertheless, for us, I can agree with you, sir. But I think giving time to the student first 6 months to just understand what is the subject and making it interesting help goes a long way. Dumping the topic straight away from day one when he joins, in next 7 days, the topic should be either with me or I will give you the topic. So that is generally counterproductive. So he always finds an easy way to meet the deadline. But I think giving time to the student and encouraging the student to participate in the departmental activities passively, not actively but passively, so that you can understand what's going wrong. That is why PG is for 3 years. Otherwise, it could very well finish in 6 months. If you ask me to read for the exam, any student can clear in 6 months. But why 3 years are given? To understand the nuances of the subject. And for choosing the topic, also about 6 months should be given to the student to at least understand what he likes, what he is interested in, and the importance of taking the topic to its finality, that is the publication. So he must understand what I'm going to do will be with me for next the part of my life. Like Dr. Mohan Isaac said, he very fondly remembers his first his that is the only work that he actually remembers. If I will take the liberty of saying it. So that is the kind of work which a postgraduate does, and he should feel from the heart. And for that, he should be given time to select it. So that is my personal experience, but nevertheless, I agree with your observations, and I am also equally. I would say I agree with you, and I also feel the same. Thank you, sir. That is.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I think Dr. Sabin is keen to ask some questions. Dr. Sabin?
Hello. Thank you. I had written in the chat what my experience as a teacher in a government medical college in Kerala has been that the guides tell to the student that doing the thesis, it is part of training how to do all those methodology right. And the research question, whether it is novel or it is adding to a new thing, that takes a back seat actually. So you select a topic which you can do. You can come to the OPD. I can see the patients in the OP or in the ward, and within 9 months you can get enough sample size, whichever, and from there you go back and decide what the topic is. So what is actually happening in the field of psychiatry, what is happening recently, what is the felt need of the patient, all those things are taken a back seat. There is no single a solution to this, I know. But then if I have posted the guidelines of my university, the Kerala University of Health Sciences, that very clearly says that the research question is not at all in their consideration. At least they could have mentioned that at least one word, okay, something about also should be considered. They very clearly said that the purpose of the PG thesis is to train oneself in how to do the research and write it up. And nothing has been mentioned about the other things about the finer. So I just wanted to hear Mohan sir's comments on it, and I'm happy to see you, sir. I fondly remember, meeting you during our NIMHANS early career workshop along with Norman Sartoris. That was a real boost in the initial stages of my career. Hi, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Sebind. I have read all your comments written in the chat box also. These are, the way, one of the things that you mentioned is that it's a requirement of the National Medical Council that students should have either sent a paper or got a paper accepted or, has done something about it. And it's very difficult. It was not there before. I mean, I mentioned about my own paper not highlighting that it has to be published. I also believe, going by again very carefully the CanMed guidelines of the qualities of a young medical graduate, where you become a lifelong learner. The purpose of the research is to learn about methodology, how these things are done, so that you may never do any research again other than your practice-based research. But you should have the ability to read research papers and enhance your own expertise and knowledge. Because in medicine, knowledge is advancing rapidly. There's so many publications. So, somebody will need to probably go through all this. I agree with you that some of the things the NMC has put down, as requirements may be too much, may be unachievable. And very often when you put unachievable things, nobody achieves it and everybody takes it as a pass. So, if you ask me, a student should be able to, research is a method of inquiring. You have to be curious about the things which you don't know. You should know how to frame a question, to answer that question, and how to go about doing it. What are the methods? You cannot become an expert researcher by doing an MD thesis. You only get into that so you become curious, so you learn more, you know how to do a review, you know how to make points, etc. So it's a kind of beginning of a lifelong journey of learning from what other people do. And in the process, whether you are in general practice or just clinical practice, whatever it is, you can ask questions, you can be with your. In fact, I personally also propagate something called practice-based research, because all of us are supposed to do evidence-based practice. I mean, like if you look at the practice of a typical clinical psychiatrist managing people with severe mental disorders, uh, I'm talking not about India at this point in time, I'm talking about Australia. And this is probably true of United States. Hardly anybody follows any practice guidelines, although the PA, RANs, HCP, etc. come out periodically with the practice guidelines. Why it is very difficult to follow those guidelines? You have the real patient. So the real world practice and the evidence-based practice are very different kinds of things. If you look at the typical prescription of somebody who has been unwell with, let us say, paranoid schizophrenia for 10 or 12 years, it is an example of how not to use psychopharmacology. I mean, polypharmacy. I mean, Jeff Leverman talks about not irrational polypharmacy, but rational polypharmacy. So how do you learn? See, because the evidence base is created in a way largely, I mean, I'm only now talking about psychopharmacology. So lots of things are developed by your practice. And unless you are a knowledgeable person who knows to analyze, look at things, you will never be able to make lessons from this. So I don't have any special response. I think NMC needs to look into these guidelines by people who are very practical, who have real world experience, and revise them so that people can follow it and not just make a fuss of the whole thing.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
That's all.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions? There are some comments about how do we support statistics and how statistician is important and how biostatistics department should be there in every institution. There was also some discussion in the NMC whether we should give away on thesis and focus a lot of things just on research and publication, because they also felt it was very difficult to sustain this work of supporting thesis. That's one view. In some institutions across the India, they have said e-copy of the thesis is mandatory to be deposited, and anybody can access those theses through the e-resources. That's another way. In Creative Commons, there is a platform for unpublished theses also to be made available. That's another view of keeping the work for the thesis. And we were just looking now that there are 1,000 postgraduates in psychiatry at any given point of time, and you can imagine there are 1,000 guides also. So huge number of work which starts and goes on every year. So there are many challenges. We have come to the last minute of this very interesting session. If the Colonel Dr. Rajiv Saini wants to say anything, or Professor Mohan wants to say anything, we will have the last concluding remarks. Sir?
No, I just wanted to correct you. He's not Colonel Saini, he's Brigadier Saini.
Brigadier, sorry.
It's a big jump. I mean, Colonel and Brigadier, he would know. I know about the army ranks. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to correct you. I only wanted to say one thing very quickly, that I finished my MD in 1977. And then the next several years, after 2, 3, or 4 years later, the Indian Medical Council said thesis is not required for all postgraduate program. That was there only for 2 or 3 years. Thesis was reintroduced. So why did this occur? It so occurred at that time. The Union Health Minister was, the famous and very scholarly Dr. Karan Singh, who himself was a doctorate and very scholarly man. So once the students of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences wanted to have a free chat with him. So he went into the All India Institute. This is what I have heard. All India Institute of Library over a cup of tea. He was having a chat. Students were asking questions about various things and he was answering. So in the library, incidentally, apparently he was sitting in the section where all the bound theses were there. So being a scholar himself, he pulled out 1 or 2 theses, went through it, went through the last, the limitations and suggestions for work, etc. He read through it and he asked the dean and the director who were all sitting with him, what has happened to this? What has happened to this? What has happened? In other words, he wanted to know, is there any kind of follow-up, etc. I believe the director and the dean and the VIPs who were around him didn't know anything. They didn't have any answers. They didn't even know what happened. It was even then a formality that you finish the thesis, you bind and give a copy to the library. That's a requirement. Library, of course, it's faithfully recorded and kept somewhere. Maybe 2 years later, somebody who does research on the same topic might go and refer. Otherwise, nobody refers. Some people, of course, will publish it. Anyway, he got so wild, he said, if this is the purpose of the thesis, why have thesis at all? And he ordered that thesis not be there. But it was there only for 2 or 3 years. This is, of course, old story, 1980, 1981, etc., etc. That's all I wanted to say. Back to you, Kishor.
Sir, you have completed MD in 1977, and I was born in 1978.
You're making me suddenly feel so old, Bhavesh. Doesn't matter. I know I am old, but I know that many people in the audience may not have been even born at that time.
You are very young, sir.
Sir, Rajiv Saini, sir, you want to say
before? Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. It's been a wonderful journey so far, sir. I look forward to more such sessions, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Hinal, ma'am, last comments. You have raised the hands.
No, I was just listening to all of the conversation, and of course, congratulations first to Brigadier. But I think if this, if there are 30 people here who are talking, if we can reach out to each other when we have trouble with our thesis, it would be a good support system. Because, as Bhavesh is saying, he's struggling there. So, well, at least you have 25 other people who are here who will help you out. So I think that's another thing that we have to think about, how we support each other through these times. Thank you.
Madam, I have circulated this in the whole Gujarat twice this month.
So we have friends, sir. Now you have friends across, and you can just connect us in Twitter or the email. We will be available, and most of us. So I think, as Meenal ma'am suggested, now there is a huge group of psychiatry teachers, and this particular session is one of them. And I hope every session on Sunday special with psychiatry teachers has something new for discussion and learning. We are sharp on time, just 5 minutes more than what we do. So I would thank everyone, and we are concluding this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Sir,
very much.
can you share, sir, previous sessions?
Yes, we can share that.
Okay,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.